Rain lashed against the stone battlements as Sarah Morgan watched the life she had dreamed of crumble before her eyes. Not with a roar, not with a battle, but with a quiet glint of silver on another woman's finger. 7 years of loyalty, sacrifice, and devotion vanished in a single moment. A queen does not fight for a weak king's attention. She walks away and captures the heart of a more dangerous king. High among the western mountains stood Blackthorn Keep, the ancestral stronghold of the Iron Pack. For generations, it had been a symbol of strength and tradition. For the last 3 years, it had been Sarah Morgan's home. Sarah had not been born into the Iron Pack. She was the daughter of a powerful southern family, given in marriage to Alpha Rolando Bivens to secure peace between their territories and strengthen trade routes that had once been soaked in blood. Sarah had fulfilled every duty expected of her. She fought beside Iron Pack warriors during brutal winter campaigns. Her strategic mind had saved entire battalions from destruction. She repaired damaged alliances. She organized the kingdom's finances. She calmed restless nobles. And every success Alpha Rolando enjoyed had been built upon plans that originated from her brilliant mind. Tomorrow was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. The winter solstice, the day the Iron Pack elders would officially recognize her as Luna of the Iron Pack. As evening settled over the keep, Sarah made her way toward Rolando's private solar. In her hands rested a gift she had commissioned months earlier, a hunting dagger forged from rare star metal, a gift worthy of an alpha. She approached the heavy oak door. It was slightly open. Warm firelight spilled into the hallway. Sarah reached for the handle. Then she heard laughter, a woman's laughter. Soft, intimate, dangerous. "You shouldn't," a woman whispered. "What if she sees it?" Sarah froze. She recognized the voice instantly. Delilah Hutchins, a recently widowed noblewoman who had arrived at Blackthorn Keep seeking protection. "What if the elders recognize it?" Delilah asked nervously. "Let them," Rolando's deep voice answered. The affection in his tone struck Sarah harder than any blade. She had never heard him sound that way with her. "The elders care about power," Rolando said. "And my strength comes from you, Delilah. Sarah is a political obligation, nothing more." Sarah's heart stopped. "But the ring," Delilah whispered. "It belongs to the Luna. It belongs to whoever I choose," Rolando replied. Unable to stop herself, Sarah looked through the narrow opening. The sight nearly shattered her. Rolando stood beside the fireplace, with Delilah wrapped in his arms. It wasn't their embrace that stole Sarah's breath. It was the ring, a massive sapphire surrounded by ancient silver craftsmanship. A treasured heirloom passed down through generations of the Morgan family. Sarah's grandmother's ring. The ring entrusted to Rolando until the day she officially became Luna. The symbol of her bloodline, her heritage, her future. And now it glittered on Delilah Hutchins' hand. A lesser woman might have stormed into the room. A lesser woman might have screamed, might have fought, might have wept. Sarah did none of those things, because Sarah Morgan was not ruled by emotion. She was ruled by strategy. Slowly, she stepped away from the door. The star metal dagger felt suddenly heavy in her hands. For 3 years, she had built Rolando's reputation. She had hidden his weaknesses, protected his authority, created victories he happily claimed as his own, and he had rewarded her loyalty by giving away her family's most sacred possession. The love she had carried for him died that night, not dramatically, not loudly, quietly, completely. By the time Sarah returned to the banquet hall, her face was calm, unreadable. No one would have guessed that her heart had turned to ice. The pre-solstice feast was in full celebration. Music echoed through the hall. Nobles laughed. Warriors drank. At the high table, Alpha Rolando played the role of devoted mate. He smiled at Sarah, raised his goblet toward her, whispered sweet words for the benefit of the Iron Pack elders. But Sarah noticed where his eyes traveled. Again and again and again, always toward Delilah. The woman sat among the nobles wearing an expensive crimson gown, and every time she reached for her wine, the sapphire ring flashed in the candlelight. Sarah's wolf growled inside her, demanding blood, demanding vengeance, patience. She silenced the beast. Revenge was best served cold, and winter had only begun. Halfway through the feast, Sarah placed a hand on Rolando's arm. "My Alpha," she said softly. "I fear I am unwell. The preparations have exhausted me. With your permission, I would like to retire early." Rolando barely glanced at her. Of course, that was all. No concern, no questions, no attempt to accompany her. Sarah smiled politely. Then she stood and left. The moment the banquet doors closed behind her, the mask disappeared. She headed not for the Luna's chambers, but for the small room she had occupied when she first arrived at Blackthorn Keep. There she changed quickly. Gone were the velvet gowns, gone were the jewels, gone were the symbols of her position. Instead, she dressed for survival: leather armor, wool trousers, fur-lined cloak, practical boots. She packed only what belonged to her. Her mother's journal, a hunting bow, a quiver of arrows, a pouch of silver coins. Everything else stayed behind, including Rolando's gifts, including his promises, including the life she'd sacrificed so much to build. Hours later, Sarah slipped quietly into the stables. A massive warhorse named Ironhoof greeted her with a low nicker. He was stubborn, aggressive, unfriendly to almost everyone, which was precisely why Sarah trusted him. "Ready for one final journey," she whispered. The horse stamped a hoof. Within minutes, they rode through the rear gate. Snow swirled around them. The storm concealed their escape. Sarah never looked back. Rolando would expect her to flee south to her family. That was exactly where he would send his riders. No. She needed somewhere beyond his reach, somewhere powerful enough to challenge him, somewhere ruled by a man even Rolando feared. She turned Ironhoof north, toward the Obsidian Ridge, toward the forbidden lands of the Shadow Pack, toward the territory of the infamous Dark Alpha King, Brian Donovan, the ruthless ruler whose name alone made powerful alphas tremble. As the blizzard swallowed her trail, Sarah Morgan rode into the darkness, leaving behind a faithless mate, a stolen future, and a kingdom that would soon learn exactly how dangerous a betrayed queen could become. The storm grew fiercer as Sarah Morgan rode deeper into the northern wilderness. Snow whipped across the landscape in violent waves, reducing visibility to only a few feet ahead. The mountains of the Obsidian Ridge rose like jagged teeth against the night sky, their dark peaks disappearing into swirling clouds. Most travelers avoided these lands. Stories told throughout the southern territories painted the Shadow Pack as monsters. Their warriors were said to be ruthless. Their king was rumored to be a conqueror who ruled through fear and bloodshed. Sarah had once believed those stories. Now she was willing to trust a feared enemy more than the man she had spent years serving. Hour after hour, Ironhoof pushed forward through deep snow. The cold bit through Sarah's layers of clothing, but her determination remained untouched. Behind her lay betrayal. Ahead of her lay uncertainty. By dawn, the familiar forests of Iron Pack territory had vanished completely. The trees here were darker, older, twisted by centuries of harsh winters and ancient magic. An unsettling silence hung over the landscape. Even the wind seemed hesitant to disturb these lands. Sarah sensed she was no longer alone. The feeling arrived before any physical sign appeared. A predator's instinct, a warning. The hairs on the back of her neck rose. Ironhoof became restless beneath her. Moments later, enormous wolves emerged from the shadows. One by one, they stepped from behind snow-covered trees. Their massive bodies moved with terrifying grace. Their glowing amber eyes remained fixed on Sarah. The circle around her tightened. Every escape route disappeared. Yet Sarah remained calm. She understood power. She understood territory. And she understood that panic would only invite attack. The wolves watched her carefully. Their behavior suggested discipline rather than savagery. These were not mindless beasts. They were soldiers. Then the formation shifted. The wolves parted. A single figure emerged from the storm. Brian Donovan. Even surrounded by giant wolves, he commanded immediate attention. His presence carried the weight of absolute authority. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with the confidence of a man who feared nothing. A long scar cut across one side of his face, giving him a dangerous appearance that matched every legend Sarah had heard. His cold grey eyes studied her with ruthless precision. Nothing escaped his notice. Not the exhaustion in her posture, not the lack of an escort, not the scent of betrayal lingering around her. The encounter stretched into a tense silence. Neither looked away. Neither surrendered ground. The Northern King evaluated the unexpected visitor standing before him. The Southern noblewoman assessed the man whose reputation had haunted border territories for years. Eventually Brian turned and began leading the way through the forest. The wolves moved with him. Sarah followed. The journey continued northward. Hours later, the Shadowpack fortress appeared. Unlike the elegant keeps of the south, this stronghold seemed carved directly from the mountains themselves. Massive black stone walls blended into the surrounding cliffs. Watchtowers stood like silent guardians above narrow mountain passes. The structure projected strength rather than beauty. Every detail served a purpose. Every stone spoke of survival. Sarah immediately understood why no enemy had ever successfully conquered it. Inside, the fortress felt equally imposing. Warriors moved through the halls with discipline and confidence. No one wasted time. No one lingered idly. The atmosphere differed greatly from Blackthorn Keep. There were no nobles competing for attention. No endless political performances. No excessive luxury. Only efficiency. Only purpose. For the first time in years, Sarah found herself in a place where appearances mattered less than results. The days that followed revealed even more surprises. Brian Donovan governed differently than Southern rulers. He rewarded competence. He valued strength. Most importantly, he listened. Sarah expected suspicion. Instead, she found opportunity. Maps soon covered large tables within the fortress war room. Reports arrived daily from scouts and border patrols. Military leaders gathered regularly to discuss strategy. Among them stood Frederick, Brian's trusted lieutenant, experienced, loyal, and highly respected among the northern warriors. Frederick served as both advisor and commander. Initially skeptical of Sarah's presence, he quickly recognized her extraordinary intelligence. One by one, weaknesses within Iron Pack territory appeared on the maps. Supply routes, border defenses, hidden vulnerabilities, mistakes that Alpha Rolando Bivens never realized existed. As Sarah analyzed each position, a startling truth emerged. Much of Iron Pack's success over the previous 3 years had depended entirely upon her. The victories credited to Rolando, the alliances praised by the elders, the economic growth admired by neighboring packs. All of it traced back to Sarah's efforts. Brian recognized this immediately. The realization altered the balance of power between them. No longer viewed as a refugee, Sarah became something far more valuable. An architect, a strategist, a woman capable of reshaping kingdoms. As winter deepened, Sarah experienced a freedom she had never known. No one demanded that she remain silent. No one dismissed her ideas. No one treated her as an ornament beside a throne. Her opinions carried weight. Her plans received consideration. Her intelligence earned respect. For the first time in years, she felt seen. The bitterness left behind by Rolando's betrayal slowly transformed into something stronger. Purpose, determination, ambition, and with every passing day, a new future began taking shape. Far to the south, Blackthorn Keep remained unaware of the storm gathering beyond its borders. Alpha Rolando Bivens believed he had discarded a loyal mate. He believed he had replaced her. He believed he remained secure upon his throne. He could not have been more mistaken. Because in the frozen north, Sarah Morgan was no longer rebuilding her broken heart. She was preparing a kingdom's downfall, and standing beside her was the most feared king on the continent. A king who had begun to recognize her true worth. A king who was already imagining what they might accomplish together. The Iron Pack still celebrated its strength. The Iron Pack still trusted its walls. The Iron Pack still followed Alpha Rolando Bivens. None of them realized that their greatest weapon had become their greatest enemy. And winter was far from over. Winter refused to loosen its grip on the northern territories. Deep snow covered the mountain passes, and icy winds swept across the valleys like sharpened blades. Most rulers would have waited for spring before launching a campaign. Brian Donovan saw opportunity where others saw obstacles. With Sarah Morgan guiding every step, the Shadow Pack prepared for war. Weeks of planning transformed into action. Maps filled the war room. Supply routes were secured. Warriors trained relentlessly. Every weakness within Iron Pack territory had been identified. Every mistake Alpha Rolando Bivens had made was carefully documented. The greatest advantage, however, remained Sarah herself. She knew every hidden passage, every vulnerable gate, every corrupt commander, every weakness hidden behind Blackthorn Keep's impressive walls. Far to the south, Rolando continued searching for Sarah. His obsession consumed him. Messengers rode across neighboring territories. Accusations were thrown at former allies. Old friendships began to fracture. The stability Sarah had spent years creating slowly crumbled beneath his careless leadership. Meanwhile, Delilah Hutchins occupied the position Sarah once held. She wore expensive gowns, sat beside the Alpha during feasts, accepted attention that did not belong to her. Most importantly, she continued wearing the sapphire ring stolen from the Morgan bloodline. The sight of it reached Sarah through scout reports. Each report strengthened her resolve. The day of reckoning drew closer. Finally, under the light of the hunter's moon, the Shadow Pack moved. No war horns announced their arrival. No banners warned of their approach. Brian's warriors traveled through forgotten mountain paths and abandoned smuggler routes known only to Sarah. The army crossed into Iron Pack territory unnoticed. Blackthorn Keep slept peacefully. Inside its walls, nobles celebrated another feast. Laughter echoed through the great hall. Wine flowed freely. The guards remained relaxed. No one expected danger. No one imagined that the woman they had betrayed was already standing outside their gates. As midnight approached, Shadow Pack warriors reached the eastern postern entrance. Years earlier, Sarah had ordered repairs postponed after discovering structural weaknesses within the gate. Rolando had ignored the issue, now that negligence returned to destroy him. The gate opened with surprising ease. Shadowpack's soldiers flooded into the keep. Within minutes, key positions were secured. Resistance collapsed before it could organize. Panic spread through Blackthorn Keep. The great hall doors exploded inward. Conversation died instantly. Shock rippled through the gathered nobles. Brian Donovan entered first. His presence alone commanded silence. Behind him stood heavily armed Shadow Pack warriors. Then came Sarah. The room stared in disbelief. She no longer resembled the obedient future Luna they remembered. Gone were the delicate gowns and polished smiles. Dark armor covered her body. A heavy fur cloak draped across her shoulders. Confidence radiated from every step. She looked less like a noblewoman and more like a queen returning to claim her throne. At the high table, Alpha Rolando Bivens rose in horror. For a brief moment, disbelief crossed his face. Then came realization. The kingdom he thought belonged to him had already been lost. The Iron Pack elders watched in stunned silence. Many had respected Sarah. Some had even suspected she was responsible for much of Rolando's success. Now they saw the truth standing before them. One by one, Sarah exposed the failures that had nearly destroyed the pack. Corrupt officials, empty garrisons, misused resources, broken alliances, neglected defenses. Every secret Rolando had hidden was revealed. Every lie unraveled before the entire court. The Alpha's authority shattered. The nobles could no longer deny reality. Sarah had built the foundation of Iron Pack prosperity. Rolando had merely stood upon it. Humiliation replaced confidence. Fear replaced arrogance. The mighty Alpha found himself standing alone. When he attempted to reclaim control, he discovered he had already lost the loyalty of those around him. Even his own guards hesitated. The Iron Pack elders exchanged troubled glances. Years of poor decisions suddenly became impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Delilah Hutchins sat frozen beside the throne. The sapphire ring glittered beneath the candlelight. Sarah approached calmly. There was no anger visible on her face. No satisfaction, only certainty. The ring was removed from Delilah's hand and returned to its rightful owner. For the first time since her departure, Sarah felt complete. The heirloom settled perfectly onto her finger. A piece of her family had finally come home. Delilah's borrowed importance vanished with it. Everything she had gained through deception disappeared in a single moment. The great hall fell silent. Every eye focused on Sarah and Brian. The balance of power had shifted completely. The Iron Pack elders slowly lowered themselves to one knee. Their example spread throughout the hall. Nobles followed. Warriors followed. Servants followed. One after another, the people of Blackthorn Keep acknowledged the new reality. Rolando's reign had ended. A new era had begun. Brian could have claimed the victory entirely for himself. Instead, he turned toward Sarah, the woman who had survived betrayal. The woman who had outmaneuvered an Alpha. The woman who had helped conquer a kingdom without destroying it. For the first time in her life, Sarah stood beside a ruler who valued her strength rather than fearing it. A ruler who respected her intelligence rather than taking credit for it. A ruler who saw her as an equal. Together they stood before the kneeling court, not as conqueror and servant, not as Alpha and advisor, but as partners. The future stretched before them like an unwritten legend. The North and West now stood united. The enemies who once underestimated Sarah Morgan would never make that mistake again. Rolando Bivens had stolen her future. In return, she had taken his kingdom. And as the snow continued falling beyond the walls of Blackthorn Keep, a new queen rose beside the Dark Alpha King. The age of Sarah Morgan and Brian Donovan had begun.